communication from the chair. I'm going to approve item number 1 on consent, and if we could begin with item number 2.
Okay, item number 2 is a CLA report. A CLA report relative to the use of up to $950,000 in Transportation Development Act Article 3 funds from Metro, and an MOU and scope of work with Ciclavia to conduct bicycle events pursuant to a Weezer-Garcetti motion. If you recall, at our last meeting, we had the Weezer motion before us, which authorized the Department of Transportation to accept the $950,000 from Metro and to authorize the mayor to negotiate an MOU with the city for spending that money with Ciclavia. We had some concerns related to some of the language in the MOU, so we've been working with Mayor's Office and Ciclavia to put together a new MOU, and that is before the committee right now.
Any other report from staff, or is that it?
No, I think that's it.
Okay. I'll start with cards on this item. Pardon?
We have a special agenda in the cards. I believe special agenda item 2.
Yes.
So it starts at 2:15.
At 2:15.
Oh, it's called time certain. Okay. So everything else on this agenda?
Well, which one do you want to speak on? I put it 2 cards. Did you? Okay. This
Do we
number
have
2?
one for the regular session?
They're all in item 2.
This one is for the special.
Okay.
These two.
Oh. Okay, this is for the, and the regular item 2 is?
Is 6:15? No, it's right now.
Okay. All right, so regular item 2 of, on the Ciclavia. If we have 2 speakers, one is Eric Bruins, to be followed by Aaron Talley.
Good afternoon. I'm Eric Bruins with the LA County Bicycle Coalition, and we're just really excited to see Ciclavia get taken to the next level. I think it's really great that the city deems them worthy of their funds, and I think that Ciclavia has done more to build the momentum for walking and biking and build the political support and build public appreciation for bicyclists and pedestrians than any other thing the city's ever done. And so I think this is a valuable use of taxpayer funds, and we are really excited to see Ciclavia go to the next level. Thank you.
Thank you. Certainly agree with you there. Aaron Polly.
Hi, I'm Aaron Paley of the
sorry
Executive
about
Director of Ciclavia. It's okay. I wanted to thank this committee for taking this up. I wanted to thank Councilmember Weezer for putting the motion forward, and to you, Councilmember Koretz and Councilmember Rosendahl and Labange, who've all been very supportive of this. This is now, I want just to say that Los Angeles has become the host of the largest car-free event in the United States. It's something that is a public-private partnership that we all can be proud of. It's an example really to the nation right now. Cities all around the country are looking towards Los Angeles and looking at what we're doing. Very excited for this next step. This funding is going to be a major step forward, not just for Ciclavia as an organization, but for all of Los Angeles. I thank you for your support.
Thank you. And I have a couple of questions from staff. I don't know who's here. And my first question, as we improve our procedures, as we staff these events, are we adjusting staffing and trying to be as efficient as we can, seeing if we need fewer traffic officers, et cetera, based on our experience from previous events?
Good afternoon, Robert Undalone, Department of Transportation. Yes, we're working with the organizers as well as the special events group to determine exactly the most efficient way to use the staff. Obviously, we want to keep safety in mind, so we won't reduce the staff beyond what we believe is a safe amount. As the new routes are developed, obviously we'll work and try to identify those efficiencies early on.
So we're, after each one of these that we do, I presume we're evaluating ourselves and looking at how we can improve our operations.
Yes, as well as looking at the costs and see the number of charges associated with it, and we try to make sure that we use the lower cost staff to fund the majority of the staffing of the post.
And Are there obligations for outreach in the MOU as we move this to new areas to make sure we outreach and let the public know in the new geographic areas that we're including?
Yes, there are the specific language statements within the MOU requiring outreach during the working meetings with the mayor's office as well as the CAO and the CLA. We identified different groups that needed to be addressed as far as the large businesses or apartment complexes in different areas such as West Los Angeles that would require a little bit more special handling.
And I think also in the scope of work, you'll notice we have the requirement to obtain final sign-off from the affected council district and mayor's office on the final route and a lot of outreach.
Great. All right, I don't have any other questions. We'll move this item forward.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And there's a special placeholder for Friday in council for this item.
Great. Next item?
Okay, that brings us to the special meeting. If you want to take item 2 on the special meeting, it's related to the Ciclavia item, which is the CAO report relative to DOT claiming up to $5.9 million in Transportation Development Act Article 3 funds for bicycle and pedestrian facilities for 2008-9, 9-10, 10-11, and 12-13.
Okay, if we could have a staff report on this as well.
Good afternoon, Ida Rubio with the CAO. As you know, the City of Los Angeles receives Transportation Development Act Article 3 formula funding from the LA County Metropolitan Authority. These funds are received from Metro, and they come from 1/4 of 1% of the sales tax on gasoline and are made available to cities and counties for the implementation of bicycle and pedestrian facilities and programs. Funds are apportioned annually to local jurisdictions based on population. As outlined in the CAO report, DOT is requesting authority to claim up to $5.9 million in TDA funding from prior year allocations, which were previously placed on reserve with the Metro. Upon receipt of these funds, they will be deposited into the local transportation fund, which is administered by DOT and used to pay for expenditures on approved projects. The report before you contains a list of those projects, which are related to the city's approved bicycle plan. In addition, the report includes the $950,000, which would be used for the Ciclavia bike program, as discussed previously. The department is here if you have any specific questions on any of the projects.
I don't, but I do have 2 cards, so we could hear again from Aaron Paley and Eric Bruins. Oh, okay.
Hello again. I just wanted to say this is really, really exciting to see the city investing this much in bicycling infrastructure. I think what you see here is that the city is now going through their almost entire backlog of TDA allocation, which really builds the case for why we need more funds for bicycling infrastructure just to maintain the current rate at which we're able to construct bike lanes and bike paths. And so what we need to be figuring out is how to increase the amount of funds available because the amount of funds that are currently dedicated to bicycling infrastructure are basically inadequate. And so we hope to work with the mayor's office and with the various council members that are also on the Metro board to be increasing the funds for active transportation in the county generally, so that way the city can continue its remarkable progress and actually becoming livable. Thank you.
Thank you. I certainly agree, and I think the more bicycle infrastructure we have, the more it also becomes a viable alternative to other methods like the automobile. So I had hoped to see the city do this 40 years ago. I'm very excited to actually see us really moving on this now. And as soon as Mr. LeBonge takes his seat, I will entertain a motion on special item number 2. Distributing gas tax monies. Would you like to make such a motion?
I'll move it.
Okay, and without objection, that will be the motion so ordered. Okay. And now back to special item number 1.
Special item number 1 is a DOT report relative to the removal of 1,140 underutilized on-street parking meters.
Now, special item 2. too, so it'll be a regular invitation.
Good afternoon, council members.
Good afternoon.
I'm Dan Mitchell, Department of Transportation. As the council's aware, the department has been making a focused effort over the last several years to upgrade the parking meter technology throughout the city. New parking meters that accept credit cards and have real-time communication have been deployed now through 96% of the spaces in the city of Los Angeles. Of the remaining spaces, many of those were intentionally skipped over in the upgrade process because we identified that they had very low demand. Now that completed upgrading those areas, we've completed an analysis of those remaining zones, and now before you bring a recommendation to remove 1,140 underutilized parking meters throughout the city of Los Angeles. The list is in attachment A. These parking meters are paid on an average just 22 minutes out of every day. That represents about 4% of metered hours. This is extremely low demand. And most of these
Just
areas...
take it for a second. Hey, the acoustics of the building tell me everything you're saying. So if either, because you want me to know everything, I'll hear it. No disrespect, but I don't know if you know that everything gets bounced up when you talk there, so. Thanks.
So these parking meters are extremely low demand, and on most of these blocks, the situation has occurred because of a change in land use, where
Give me a street, like.
A street like we've got Sunset. I know of Sunset in the Hollywood Western area where there was a home improvement store built, and there's now free parking that's between the meters.
So you're going to remove the meters? You're going to put red curb there, or are you going to put?
No, just remove the meters and retain the time limits. But right now, there's no reason to have metered parking as a way to force turnover those spaces because the demand doesn't support that.
And nobody's parking there now, obviously.
Very few people are parking there now, and so there's no need to assess a fee in order to help turn over those spaces. The time limits do that effectively at this point.
How much does it cost to actually physically remove the meters?
It requires some of our staff time. A team of about 5 technicians can remove about 100 meters in a day.
So it's a relatively de minimis cost to actually remove them.
It would be part of the regular duties that our staff performs in maintaining the parking meters. But over the years, what we haven't done is been proactive in looking for these locations. And now that we've got better data on how things are working, we're really making a focused effort to complete by the end of this year, removing all of the old meters.
Just out of curiosity, what do we do with the old meters? What have we been doing? Because I know we've been replacing them all over the city.
Well, those elements that are salvageable, like sometimes even older meters that we're removing will have newer electronic locks, for example, or newer housings that we can reuse in other places. The mechanisms themselves, we've been storing for parts. Once we no longer have any of those meters in the city, then we'll make an effort to salvage all of that equipment. There also have been other cities that still use that equipment that have contacted us, interested in purchasing some of our spare equipment.
Yeah, I was going to say, hopefully we're finding the best use for them. If there are other cities, if Hollywood has use for props, if they could be sold to the general public for some modest amount, some people would probably enjoy having them in their homes just for the fun of it. So I hope we're thinking of all the efficiencies that we can to.
I make a motion. We sell them for $25 a parking meter head, and the money go to cultural affairs. What do you think?
If we could do that, I think that would be great.
That'd be fun. I bought when they used to have call boxes, Paul. When they had a police call box on street corners, and I bought for $7. That's all I had. It was $25 a box. I didn't have $25. This is a long time ago, Paul. But I bought a $7, the front box that you used to pull down, and people would do it. I think that'd be interesting. So could we look at that, Madam CLA? If we could direct the sale of surplus parking meter heads, get them in time for Christmas, you know, unique gifts.
I'll put in the first $25 for an order if we go that route. Mr. Labange, any questions?
Just the question is, at Sunset and Western, since you picked Sunset and Western, it's an impact intersection with a bus line down Sunset Boulevard, and Western is the second busiest street. I think if you're going to remove them, I think in some places you should extend the red curve for allowing more flexibility in such an impacted intersection as Sunset and Western. So all I ask you is when you remove, if you could take a little more red curb, do so, especially on a bus street, but you'll be the judge, and I know Jeannie Chin, I think, is the engineer up there.
Jeannie Shen, yeah.
Jenny Shen, excuse me.
Mhm.
Did you ever see Cool Hand Luke?
Yes, sir.
Good, very good, okay. Opening scene.
Yeah, so we do have standards for, Councilman, we do have standards for the length of those red curbs, depending on where the bus zones are and distance from intersections, so we apply those standards in reviewing blocks.
And the other thing I wanted to ask you, there used to be a report that came out, the the Wilshire Western Parking Meter District, Hollywood, Vermont, Sunset Vine, and it showed how many meters there were and how much money they were generating. Do you still do that by district?
Yes, and that was delivered to your office last week.
No, I didn't see it. So who'd you
Okay,
deliver
we'll
it
get
to?
you another
To
copy.
Lisa? You got that report, Lisa? All right, no, she's not smiling. So.
We'll get you another
All
report.
right, thanks a lot.
Couple other things.
Thank you.
I wonder if there's just a small amount of additional meters in the future that are in this circumstance, if we can give DOT the authority to do this on their own rather than having to go through the CLA and the clerk's office and the council to approve meters that are used less than 5% of the time.
I appreciate that suggestion, and actually that's a great segue into the second recommendation on this report, which is to direct the department to remove meters in the future where we've got block faces that meet two criteria. The first is that non-residential paid parking demand is at least $1 a day on average. And that's our minimum when we did an analysis that pays for the capital costs, the operating and maintenance of a meter. So that's a threshold, a rather low threshold that we set the first criteria. And the second is that metered parking isn't necessary to coordinate with other parking regulations nearby. I think, Council Member, you raised the issue when we talked about removing meters in a different part of the city, that perhaps at the edge of a parking metered area, you'd want to have a block to make sure that the parking demand doesn't just keep shifting down. And we wouldn't want to have metered parking and then 3 blocks with meters or 1 without and then another 3. So to have that coordinated strategy, we included that as a criteria as well. So if blocks met both of those criteria, then what we've recommended is that that the council and mayor direct us to remove those meters when we identify them in the future, so that we don't have to come back to you and we don't anticipate ending up with 1,000 meters that we have to remove. If we continue to do this on a regular basis, we keep the meter plant lean and mean.
Okay, I would certainly support that recommendation. The only other question I have is, we're obviously being good at identifying the meters to remove. I don't know if we're doing a great job of following up on identified meters to install. There's some obvious places. I've probably mentioned them literally 20 times whenever the issue comes up. Particularly, there's an area in the airport where a couple block radius, every single space is occupied 24 hours, 24/7, and it's free for no explicable reason. Is there any reason why we've never followed up and installed meters in that area, for instance?
Actually, Council Member, we have, and that matter was brought before the council and approved. We've built the meters, and I believe we've even painted the curbs now, getting ready for it. What we're waiting for is the approval of the ordinance that adds that area to the municipal code.
What's holding that up?
As I understand it, just a backlog of work at the city attorney's office.
Well, maybe we can nudge them on that, because that's an instant revenue generator. Seems like a costly one not to move forward on. There's also another area around the DOT building in West LA itself. I don't know if there is apparently surrounded by non-metered parking for no particular reason, and is also always occupied.
Okay, I will make note of that one, and we'll take a look. We do have a list of areas that have been suggested for metered parking, and we are taking those as we can. We've been trying to focus on finishing our upgrades of what we have on our plate to maintain and operate, but then make a continued effort at chipping away at the areas that could benefit from metered parking. And those first two have come before you recently, and that's the Westchester area by the airport and an expansion of the Palms parking meter zone.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions?
The other thing I want to make sure, I did this before, I want to make sure now, in new meters, there's technology that puts a loop in the ground, so when you back out, the meter goes back to zero. There's a few joys in Los Angeles. One of them is finding a parking place, and another bonus, if there is money on the meter or time on the meter, you feel like you won a little lotto. We are not putting any technology like that in, are we?
Councilmember, this has been an issue that I know is near and dear to your heart. We have installed sensors in certain areas of the city. We are not using those sensors currently to reset any time on the meter or limit the amount of time that can be purchased. However, in the downtown area, as part of the LA Express Park program, that strategy was approved by the council as a strategy to test just in the pilot area of downtown LA. That's something that was approved about a year ago. That's not something that we've currently installed and activated.
I made a big deal about it, like when you first went into technology. How'd you get around me? Was I gone when you did
We
it?
discussed it, sir, and
I don't know about the down. I remember everything there. Anyway, I want to make
I know
sure.
it's
I want to make sure that little freedom and joy that you could get from when you find a parking meter space is still there. I don't know how you feel, Paul.
I probably have the exact opposite opinion.
Really?
We should nail every dollar we can from those parking meters.
Wow. All
There's
right.
no reason to give people a
Anyway,
mini lottery because they
You got
get
to.
there at the right time.
You got to give them some joy. I think it's important. Well, anyway, I'll talk to Maria later. Maybe we'll clarify that to make sure in some way.
there were-
And you know, the other thing too, what I hate is I see cars getting towed in Hollywood, on Cherokee, on Las Palmas. You do deals with nightclubs to let them have valet parking, and then you have tow-away zones in the meters. I think on the meter, if it's a tow-away zone, you should absolutely have a sticker on it. And Maria, if you would put that the meter must have a sticker that says no parking afterwards, because it's confusing. You think, God, there's nobody to park there. And then they come back, and there's sometimes out-of-town people, and their car's towed. So if you-
Councilmember, if I could respond to that. We did used to use stickers that placed on the meters.
Right.
There are a lot of notices we've placed on the meters, but with the new equipment that's out in 96% of these spaces, the meter itself tells you that the space is turned into a loading zone or a towaway zone, and in addition to that, it prevents you from paying into that period.
Got it, but maybe they think it's late or they don't know. I just hate to see people get their cars towed, and I think a little sticker, you know, a 2-cent sticker is worth a lot to the person who would have to shell out $192 or whatever it is to tow from Hollywood Tow. So if you could do that, I want to direct you where you are in zones. And you have some that are in between parking spaces. It's really very unique how you do some of these things. I know you're trying to accommodate the business and everything, but do you know Las Palmas, north of Las Palmas, you know those meters?
Yes, sir?
Yeah, and over on Cherokee?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, because it's very, you fool, there's a nightclub and people line their cars up, get out and go in, then they take them to the city lot, which they probably have, I hope you're paying you for that, and then someone comes along, I'll park here, it's open. You wouldn't want that to happen to your brother if he came in from out of town, or your cousin.
No, sir.
Or you
And
want to be like
that's
Paul
fine.
and tow him and get that extra $150.
No, I don't want to tow people inadvertently.
All right, well, let's
Yes.
look at that.
So that's why we've with this new technology, we made it very clear on the meter that it says tow away, no parking. So if you go to try to pay the meter, which was a problem
Yeah,
previously.
but just put it on the label. So you say, this is the parking meter right here. You walk up, it looks like a microphone, or it talks like a microphone, that's a microphone. But you have a little sign here, if you touch it after the meeting, you get shocked, you ain't gonna touch it. If you have a little sign that says, if you park here, you're gonna get towed after, you know, because you got technology, at least you could do that. Look, I'll take you out there if you need me.
Okay, thank you,
Yeah,
Councilman.
and I think that technology helps, but I think every way to warn people is a positive, so
Thank you.
I agree with my colleague. And we will move that item without objection. And I believe the last item on the agenda is special item 3.
Special item 3 is the Department of Transportation report relative to the city's policies for parking at inoperable parking meters at pay stations.
If we could have a staff report on that as well.
Yes. Again, Dan Mitchell with Department of Transportation. As we've been installing new technology throughout the city, a new policy was put in place for parking at these new meters that even if there's a coin jam, then a payment by card needs to take place. Or if there's a card jam, you need to pay by coin. And if there's no payment form available, then you need to select a different parking space. And that policy, called the pay-to-park policy, has been instrumental in ensuring an end to the excessive parking meter vandalism that we previously experienced with the old equipment. That did not apply to the old coin-only parking meters that were predominant at that time. Over the last few years, that ratio has changed, and now 96%, and hopefully by the end of this year, by the end of this calendar year, all of the meters will have this new policy applied to it. Since then, new legislation has been passed this year, and a new law goes into effect on January 1st to standardize the policy of parking at inoperable parking meters and pay stations throughout the state. We did work with the sponsors of that legislation to ensure that we could maintain our existing policies that have been so successful. In order to comply with that new law, either an ordinance or resolution needs to be passed by the council to note the exception of the intent of this new law so that we can retain our existing policies. And so that's what's before you today, an approval of this resolution that says that according to the Los Angeles Municipal Code, payment is required at each parking space, and no one is exempt from payment because there's a particular jam. It also is clear that if there are pay stations, that if there's a problem with that particular pay station, you need to go to another to pay for your space. These policies have been instrumental in improving our operability to now essentially 100%. The time that both a jam with cards and coins is in place is essentially non-existent.
My only concern would be I don't think anyone should have to not park at a public space. So if there is a circumstance where the meter is completely inoperable and both the coins and the credit cards don't work, I think they should be able to park for free rather than be forced to abandon the space. So if we have the ability to make that clarification, I don't think it comes up often with the new equipment, but I think it's rather unfair for people to expect that they'd have to pay when neither method is available. And with parking so tight in many areas of the city, particularly my district where it's incredibly dense in many areas, I don't see any reason to abandon a space because it doesn't add to revenue for the city. And it just causes more harm to the businesses and their customers.
So, Councilmember, if I could respond to that has been a concern of ours as well. Unfortunately, there are select individuals that take advantage of such a policy, and they take advantage of that to actually jam coins and jam the card slot so that parking becomes free. And by having the current policy that says if both are unavailable, then you need to find another space, it undermines that incentive. And I can assure you that the situation as it stands with our current policy occurs in one space perhaps once a month for a short period of time. And a special alert goes out to our technicians to go take care of that as soon as possible. It is an extremely rare circumstance because of this policy. And if we create that opportunity, although it seems customer friendly, there are unfortunately, as we know from past experience, quite a few people that will take advantage of that situation and then create problems with parking meters throughout the city. And that's the situation we had prior to this policy in 2010, that people would jam meters intentionally, unfortunately, and then make them unavailable for other people.
Well, I'm aware of the problem. In fact, I think it exists right where I live, where we had valets who didn't really have real spaces, and then they actually intentionally broke meters and then used them for their patrons. I'm not so sure that I believe that this will really happen on any kind of an extensive basis with the double coverage of these meters. So I would rather go the other route, and if we experience the problem, come back to us and we can pretty easily correct it. But I don't really have any confidence that there'll be an extensive number of people busting both of the systems in our parking meters. And I don't know, have we found that many of the credit card mechanisms are easily breakable and that this is actually going on?
It's not that they're breakable. People insert paper, business cards, other things into those slots to disable that. Right now, though, there's no real benefit to doing it. While they might think there is at first, over time, all they've done is disable that payment option, and so that behavior stops. With 39,000 parking meters all over the city there, and many people each day using each one, there are many, many customers and many opportunities. And so the current policy that ensures there is no incentive to break parking meters has been instrumental in allowing us to maintain them at such a high level. Unfortunately, there are certain parts of the city and there are certain individuals that take advantage of any good-natured effort we make at customer service to make sure that, in the case that someone can't pay, that they don't have to. But because of the policy, we've been able to maintain it at such a high level that no one experiences that problem. It's a bit of a chicken and the egg situation. I'm sure you can
appreciate. Does the department actually have a real fear that people will break both mechanisms and do what they used to do for one?
Unfortunately, it's not a fear. It's actual occurrences.
Or an expectation. How about
no,
that?
It's been our experience. And in fact, just 2 weeks ago, we had someone who vandalized 64 meters in Van Nuys, filling them with a foreign substance as retribution for apparently an injustice they felt with a parking citation. So these things, unfortunately, occur as part of our operational experience every day. And these
meters are now high-tech enough that they actually let us know that they're not functioning and we're able to replace.
As soon as a problem occurs, as soon as any jam of coins or cards or a low battery, our technicians are all equipped with smartphones and they receive a message from that parking meter to let them know that there's a problem and they can go attend to it. In the case of this very extremely rare circumstance when both cards and coins are jammed, not only do they receive alert, but their supervisor receives an alert. I receive an email on my phone letting me know, so we make sure we take care of it. And that's why I have such personal knowledge about the rarity of that circumstance.
Fair enough. Mr. LeBon?
Here's a technical question to follow up, since Mr. Koretz is trying to come to my side and be a little bit on that, but forgiving as you are. If I'm a parking meter officer and I go up, I got to check the meter to make sure it's broken, right? Do they check the meter? They still do that? I remember they used to do that. If their meters, do they check the meter, the parking enforcement officer, do they check the meter to see if it's broken or not?
As far as I know, they check the meter. However, with this policy on the new meters, it's essentially the responsibility of the citizen to pay for their parking. And so when they pay for their parking, the light flashes green and they're paid, and the officer only needs to worry about that.
I understand that, but I think we should go above and beyond to the people that we serve. If we get so aggressive, and I know sometimes you spend certain times on certain streets because there's a lot of cars and there's a lot of turnover, and as opposed to other streets, and I try to be cooperative with the spirit of what the Department of Transportation is, but then I get concerned because are we really representing people in that sense? Is this possible if there's a car and they're sitting there and the meter's busted can the officer know if this car has ever been ticketed before or recently, or can there be a like you used to get on Monopoly, go to pass or whatever it was? Get out a parking ticket free card for one time, but then again, what's the chances of you finding the second broken meter? And that get out a card says, this is your parking in a meeting which is against the law, or whatever the heck the words are. I would like to find a more peaceful way, because it's going to come back at us, the city of Los Angeles. In these trying times, we have to be fair, and I hate to use this word balance, but we have to be fair to the people that we serve, because the way we're given tickets, it's sometimes, whether they're tenants in street cleaning, whether they're merchants and their customers, it just has to be a little fair. I don't want it to be like it's the citizen's fault that the meter is busted. I think you could go to court and they'd turn that around. I don't know any judge in the United States who would rule in favor of the city, but I don't know a lot of judges. So I would like to say, Paul, I think we should have this discussion in council to see what they would want to do on that, because if it's busted, that's our problem. And we do have officers who are there who could see it's busted, and they could put a flag on it that says no parking, it's busted, until the guy picks it up, or a label or something. I want to be fair to the people we serve. I don't want to be so aggressive that they become bitter towards the people who run the city.
No, I appreciate that, council member, and that's exactly the programs that we had in place with our old meters. That was required because we didn't have any way of knowing when meters were broken. The traffic officers would put a little tag on it, and the technicians would be circling around to find them. But with the advent of new technology, we now get automatically notified. So this instance, that the situation where someone comes up and the meter is broken, is such an extremely rare case that we don't have that situation anymore.
If you get notified today for a broken meter, does it get fixed tomorrow?
In nearly all cases, it does. And we also have staff in on Saturdays to help with that.
I want to think about this, Paul, but I think the gentleman may have a good point, but I want to think about it.
Okay.
Well,
Recommendation to council.
yeah, I was just thinking the same thing.
Throw it open to discussion.
Let's pass this on without a recommendation. We'll have continuing discussion in council. I think the only controversy is over this small piece of it. So one way or the other, I'm sure this will pass in council.
And the challenge is, our well-intentioned efforts to be positive and customer service oriented are taken advantage of, and that's the situation that we were in previously. By having a generous policy, we had 10 to 15% of our meters broken at any time. Now we have 99.8% of our meters operating without any jams.
Of course, the difference also, as you pointed out, is even if somebody did that, it would last for a day and it would get fixed. So I think people will realize pretty quickly either way that it's not going to get them anywhere.
Unfortunately, right now we're able to maintain that level with the current level of jams, but if there's an incentive, then that's where it overwhelms us. And that's the situation we were in prior to a few years ago, where our staff spent literally all day long cleaning trash out of parking meters. I would go with them when they'd start at the end of the block, cleaning out all the foreign objects. By the time we got back to the beginning of the block, they were broken again. That we don't want to return back to that situation.
Now, how do people know whether they're going to get a ticket or not? Because part of the problem is you're in that situation, you have no idea whether you're allowed to park or not. I've never even been entirely sure as a public official. Can we set up our meters so that they inform the public that this meter is broken and if you can't pay, you can't park? With that message on the screen?
Absolutely. And so, and that's the intent of this new law, which we support, is to make the policy clear. So throughout all the state of California, there will be a default policy that you need to pay by one form or the other, but if both are unavailable, then you could park for free up to the time limit. Unfortunately, in the city of Los Angeles, that won't work for us. So what we've done is on every meter, we've placed the sticker with the pay to park policy that spells it out. When there is a coin jam, the meters say cards only, when there is a card jam, the meters say coin only. So in addition to alerting our staff, it communicates to the public what form of payment is available.
And when
If
it's
on that
both, what does it say?
extremely rare circumstance, when both are broken, it says, do not park, meter vandalized, city notified. That's what the meter says.
Okay, well, I'm leaning in your direction, but I think this should probably be a discussion at council. So we'll move this item forward without recommendation, without objection.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I believe that is everything on the agenda. There are no public comment speakers for general public comment, so we are adjourned.
It's been a fun, intimate meeting.
Yes.